Welcome back, guys. I'm Tyler. What we have here is one of our stone kits using our soft tan pigments and some spray paints. But what's different about this countertop is we did some of the chunkiest edges we could with our patcher paste. And to be honest, I don't know if they're gonna coat. We're actually getting ready to pull the weather stripping right now and let that resin flow. You're gonna have to watch till the end of the video to see how these edges turn out. So mixing the patcher paste is simple. We're gonna pop open the lids. We're gonna get both part A and B into the bucket. When you guys order the patcher paste, they'll come with these custom Leggari sticks that can get inside of there and get everything out. Now what you wanna do is you wanna mix this together until it's a consistent cream, tannish color. We'll wanna scrape the sides with a paint stick. You can see when it's thoroughly mixed, it's a consistent color. There's no dark streaks in it, no dark spots, no light spots, it's all consistent. So next step is we're gonna add our accelerator. You can add up to 8 ounces of accelerator. We're gonna add 4 ounces, depending on how fast you want this stuff to set up. Once the accelerator is added, we're gonna dump 20% of baking soda. What the baking soda is gonna do is it's gonna thicken up the patcher paste, make it even thicker so it's less sagging. That way we can do some really cool edges and there's not gonna be no sag to it. So we'll mix all this in. So to reiterate, guys, you can add up to 8 ounces per gallon and a half kit of the accelerator. That's gonna speed up the dry time. Room temperature, you can probably sand within 6 to 8 hours. If you're colder temps, you probably have to sand it the next day. But again, 70-degree temps, you should be able to sand it the same day if you do it in the morning. But again, the benefit of patcher paste for doing edges like this is the working time. It's a lot easier to work with. You don't have to mix small batches like you do of Bondo. Bondo smells really bad. It'll wipe out a whole house. This doesn't smell like Bondo. So a lot of benefits of the patcher paste. The only downside is it does take a little longer to dry and get hard versus Bondo. But again, way easier to do. A gallon and a half kit of patcher paste will do a 50 square foot kitchen, maybe even 60, 65 square foot kitchen, depending on how thick your edges are. This is a 50 square foot kitchen. Edges are about 2.5 inches thick, so they're pretty big. And we usually have a little left over with a gallon and a half of patcher paste. The 20% of baking soda, that's to thicken that patcher paste up so it doesn't sag. We can put on nice and thick on that edge. So 192 ounces minus 20% is 40 ounces. So 40 ounces of baking soda is what we added to this. And now we have a nice thick paste and we're ready to go. When you guys are taping your edges for the stone kit process, you want to make sure you do this before you mix. You want to have everything ready before you start the mixing process. That way you're not wasting time with mixed resin while you're prepping your counter. So we have 2 options for doing your edges. Weather stripping, which we're going to do on here, or painter's tape like we typically do on flat, smooth edges. But obviously this edge, we did a decorative edge, so it's really rough. It's almost impossible to get a nice seal on your edges with painter's tape. So we're going to do weather stripping on the top. We've never had a blowout with weather stripping on the top, so if you just feel more comfortable with that, you can do that even on a flat edge. But again, really chunky edge here, so we want to do the weather stripping on the top so we make sure we don't get any blowouts.
All right guys, it's mixing time. So we're gonna be mixing up a 3-gallon kit. We're gonna be adding our soft tan epoxy pigment, and we're also gonna be using Rust-Oleum spray paint in nutmeg and French beige. And we're also gonna be using our 3P2 mixing process, which stands for you're gonna mix the resin 3 times, starting at the top, going down to the bottom, going around your edges and back up very slowly. That's 1, we're gonna do that 3 times, pour into a secondary mixing container, and mix it 2 additional times. So we're gonna get our part A's dumped out first. So while we got the part A's draining into our 5-gallon bucket, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna get our Rust-Oleum spray paint right into our cups. You just use a clear cup and a cloth, and we're just gonna spray it right down that side. And the cloth helps with the spray paint not evaporating so fast. Alrighty, now we got our spray paints ready to go. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna tip our jugs back, and we're gonna let any of that resin that got trapped in those handles drain out, and then continue draining till we have a slow drip. All right, the next step, guys, we're gonna be adding our part B in the same way, and let this drain out most of the way. Tip the jug back, let any of that resin that got caught in that handle drain back out into the jug, and then continue draining till we have a slow drip. All right guys, so we're ready to mix the resin. We're gonna be using our 3P2 mixing process, like I said earlier, which stands for we're gonna start at the top, go down to the bottom very slowly, go around the edge, and then back up and around the edge one more time, and that's 1. We're gonna do that 3 times. Pour into our secondary mixing container, scrape all our sides, and then mix it 2 additional more times. All right guys, so we have our resin, we've mixed it 3 times, we poured it into our secondary mixing container, and now we're gonna add our color pack in the soft tan, and then we're gonna mix it 2 additional more times. All right, the next step is we're gonna be getting our dirty pour batches mixed up. So we are just gonna be layering in our different colors however we see fit and adding our spray paints. There's really no rhyme or reason to how we do this, just however you see fit. And guys, it's always a good idea to start off with less of the spray paint. You can always add more. It's really hard to take it out or blend it in if you get too much of one color out on your countertop. All right guys, now that we got all our batches ready to go, we just wanna be moving really fast at this point, get them over to your countertops, get them dumped out. We don't wanna leave our resin in a mass in these buckets for too long, or else it'll start heating up, flash off, and become unusable. We're gonna get the buckets over to the countertop and get them dumped out.
All right guys, so we're gonna dump these buckets out. Biggest thing is getting them out of the buckets quick. If you wanna map a design out, you can draw on the primer so you have lines to follow. If you're doing black primer, you can drag an edge of a paint stick that'll etch the black primer so you can see where to go. We're gonna go random. We're gonna start out just jumping around, getting all the colors out, and then we'll go in between all the lines that we already have out there. We'll fill those in, and then once we get down like the last bucket or 2, we really start fine tuning and filling in any of the larger spots. So really, really simple kits, guys. You can't screw these up because we're just dumping out of a bucket. The only thing you want to watch for is make sure you don't dump too much out in one section. We don't want to dump out like 3 of these buckets, 4 of these buckets here, and then we have 2 buckets for the rest of our kitchen. And that's why you'll see us jump around randomly, try to pour out similar width beads, separate the colors all throughout the counter. And as long as you're doing that, you're going to be totally fine with thickness everywhere. Another thing you can look for is colors that are coming out. Say we're pouring out 1 bucket, we have a lot of brown coming out. We might want to put a little brown color in different areas of the counter and not just have that one color all in one area. So Kyle's going to dump a little bit in there. That way I get some more of that brown color coming out. And then just remember, once you dump the spray paint in there, it's going to want to come out. The majority of it's going to want to come out quick. So I'm going to give it just a little bit of a stir, separate that a little bit, and then we're going to hop over to the other section and dump it out. I want to move a little bit quick here so you can see how much more color we have. So notice we're not getting a lot of that brown color, and I'm okay with that. I want some more of this soft tan color to be in these counters anyways. So notice how I'm filling in open areas, right? I don't want to just pour a bead here yet, because this is still leveling out. It's really thick there. So I'm hitting all the bigger areas, trying to fill those in. So we'll add some more of that nutmeg. And again, I'll give it a little stir. If I dumped it out right now, it would just be solid nutmeg. So I want to just stir that around a little bit, and then we should get more concentrations like this. So now we're going to go in between some of these lighter spots. So now we'll kind of fine tune, again, just filling in the larger areas. Okay, so we're on our last bucket. So I'm really working on the large areas, pouring smaller amounts. We don't need as much in these tighter areas. Just kind of jump around, hit the big ones first, and I'll have more control over my pour. We're just going around now, filling these in. It's just surface tension where the primer doesn't have any epoxy. Once that gets slicked off, the resin levels out very easily right there. We got some concentration areas of color. You have a lot of that natural veining, so I really like how this looks, so we're gonna leave it like that. And then I'm gonna spritz it now with isopropyl alcohol, 91% or higher. That's gonna create all the cells and dispersing effects. And we're just looking for small to medium drops. And you'll see once it hits that surface, it'll start to break it up. See all these cells it's creating in these spots? Very, very cool look. And if you guys don't want that dispersing look, you can just mist it with denatured alcohol. Another option is you can just hit random spots, maybe follow a couple veins with the dispersing effect. Like maybe I want to just disperse this vein right here. So if I wanted to just disperse random spots throughout the counter, I would just kind of follow one of these veins, and then I could leave the other spots without hitting it. So you can see all the cells, craters. Looks really, really cool. And then over here, it's more natural looking, like a vein, like a fracture vein. So after we disperse it, next thing we want to let that evaporate for about 5 minutes, and then we can mist the whole surface with denatured alcohol. What that's going to do is help release any air that's trapped in the resin, because remember, we're pouring multiple pores. We're trapping air underneath every pore, so we are going to have some bubbles throughout it, but we don't have to torch. We can simply mist it with denatured alcohol, and it'll create a glass smooth surface. And you'll notice it's not affecting the dispersed spots that we did with the ISO. Biggest thing is we don't want to flood the epoxy surface with denatured alcohol. We want to just spray it, let it evaporate 5 minutes. If we need to hit it again, we can hit it again, but we don't want to just flood that whole surface, because what that'll do is it'll start to muddy out the colors. You won't have as tight of fracture veins and stuff like that if you spray too much denatured alcohol. So for pulling the weather stripping, there's really no perfect time, because it depends on the temperature in the room, how long it took you to mix, how long they set in the buckets. So the easiest way to check is how thick the resin is. See how runny it is right off my finger? It's super wet. Still, it's not really sticky and stringy. It just wants to drip right off my finger. So it's a little too early. We'll probably give this another 20-30 minutes. I was showing you guys before, we're looking for this to be obviously set up a little bit more. See how it wants to just stick to my finger? Doesn't want to drip off as fast. So we're going to pull this down. Again, we have really thick edges, so I want to pull it a little sooner than later. Just keep in mind, when you guys are looking for a countertop kit to purchase, our stone kits are the easiest countertop kits on the market to do, and you saw why. We're simply mixing, pouring in buckets, dumping it out, filling in a couple spots. Now we're going to pull our weather stripping, brush it over the edge, and let it do its thing, and we're going to have this natural looking countertop when we're done. So if I pull it straight up, see the gap it leaves? If I pull down at an angle, it's going to pull that resin to the edge. That's going to help it get to that edge and flow over. So we want to pull it down in a way, have it coat right to that edge instead of leaving a gap. So since we have such a chunky edge, I don't want to wait for this to drip over. I want to start brushing it in so it can flow over evenly. Again, we got to get every surface coated with resin, or it's not going to flow over evenly, and we're going to have runs. So check it out, guys. Already running down that whole edge, bringing that design, that vein down with the color. Beautiful. Still giving us a chunky looking edge. These are gonna look awesome when they're all done. And then the last thing we'll have to do is just scrape the drips. That way we don't have to sand the next day.